Something interesting is happening today with crypto.
Bitcoin actually dipped below $95,000.
You see, as the Bitcoin price continues to tank, bringing the greater cryptocurrency market down with it, the level of Bitcoin fear, looking at Bitcoin's Fear and Greed Index, is at a 10, levels we have not seen since the FTX collapse of 2022 or the COVID pandemic crash of 2020.
This doesn't bode well for crypto across the board.
Again, Bitcoin's Fear and Greed right now is at a 10. During the Liberation Day tariff announcement, Bitcoin's Fear and Greed Index dipped down to a 24. The question is, what comes next? And today, with the Bitcoin price where we are today and the Fear and Greed Index at a 10, is it like buying Bitcoin here, where we have another 50% pullback to go? Or is it like buying Bitcoin here, the greatest buying opportunity in the last 5+ years? Well, leading on-chain data and analytics provider CryptoQuant explains this is why crypto and markets are crashing. Bitcoin's decline is driven by US liquidity stress, long-term Bitcoin holders' tax-driven profit-taking, and persistent American selling, meaning the United States market is seeing a liquidity crunch, liquidity stress, as we can see by the Coinbase premium, which is where the majority of United States investors buy. The premiums at a negative, as well as where the institutions buy through the ETFs. November could become Bitcoin's biggest ETF outflow month ever. Mid-month outflows have already hit 2.3 billion, making it the second largest ever. The first, again, was right before Liberation Day announcement. Another heavy week, and November could break that record. And as I share with you some of this data, it's interesting how the mainstream media explains this.
On October 10th, you had that liquidation event, which spooked investors, but you've also had long-term holders, whales, that have been selling at the highs, and they like to buy at the lows, and they're not stepping in. You have ETF outflows. In fact, yesterday you saw the biggest daily outflows of ETFs since their inception. So what you're not seeing are marginal buyers, and that's one of the points that 10x Research has made, that with no new marginal buyers, you will continue to see this range bound and weakness. And what they're watching for is the $93,000 level, because what they're saying is that below that, you are going to hit an air pocket. So unless you have catalysts that would send crypto higher, there doesn't appear to be. Even Sean Farrell of Fundstrat, who is a major bull when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto in general, he has turned in more cautious tone over the last couple of days, because what he's saying is that, okay, the liquidity that we're expecting from the government to reopen, that liquidity won't be felt for another month or two. The government shutdown was longer than what they had, what anybody really had anticipated. So that tailwind is, the timing of these tailwinds matters. And then you have the question of the Fed, which is saying it's a coin flip. It's a toss-up of whether the Fed is going to cut or not. And you need the Fed to cut in order to be able to support these asset prices going higher.
Now, the worse markets get, the better chance there is that the Fed will cut. But here's the dirty little secret on why crypto specifically is crashing today. It's because crypto is the only thing open on a weekend, right? I mean, the liquidity stress, the liquidity crunch in America specifically is happening because of the government shutdown that brought things to a screeching halt, lasted longer than anybody would have thought. And in a world where liquidity is being sucked dry from all markets, especially on a weekend, crypto will react the hardest. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Much like when liquidity is popping, when markets are going, crypto will react the hardest. And right now we're dying by the sword, when for the last many, many years since inception, we have lived by the sword, give and take. And now the good news is sellers eventually have to be exhausted. After altcoin profits are plummeting, only 5% of altcoin investors are in profit, says Glassnode, as Bitcoin is now dropping as well, at a rare divergence in this cycle. And again, the mainstream media is not sharing this with you. Altcoin Daily will. So click subscribe, join our team. One video per day keeps you informed on crypto. Because this chart shows the top 500 altcoins versus Bitcoin supply and profit. We see the Bitcoin price in this very small line here. We see in the big orange line, BTC relative supply in profit, the amount of Bitcoin holders in profit dropping sharply. And then in this bluish, grayish, thick line is median relative supply in profit. And what this means is we have just entered and have been in the altcoin capitulation zone, just like we saw years ago in 2023. Again, to give you a little bit of perspective, just like we saw right here. Now, what's good is eventually as sellers become exhausted, and sellers don't have to be exhausted today, they can keep on, Bitcoin can keep dropping lower, we can keep unlocking more sellers in the market, but eventually, we always see a capitulation zone, and when the sellers are exhausted, that is when the price stops tanking. Typically, that's followed by chop solidation for weeks, and again, if the sellers are exhausted, that's when price has to go up. Just like when buyers are exhausted, right? We tested this 115 to 125 multiple times when we saw buyers exhausted, tank back down. Buyers exhausted, tank back down. Buyers exhausted. And now we're waiting for the opposite. When will sellers be exhausted? Signs like this, I like. And what you may notice is not only do we need sellers to be exhausted, but we need a new narrative. What's the new narrative that not just for crypto, but why would markets go up? Why would the American economy be good in the following months? We need that narrative because crypto highly relies on that liquidity. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent just said this, signaling markets.
I think we are going to see a substantial acceleration in the economy in the second quarter. And I think we are also, we're already seeing on many prices, as I said, we're bending that curve down, and the increase in real incomes, I think Americans are going to feel it in the first quarter, second quarter. I think 2026, thanks to President Trump's signature plans, is going to be a great year for working Americans, for the markets. I call it parallel prosperity. Main Street and Wall Street can both do great, but I think Main Street's going to have a great year in 2026.
And really what Scott Bessent is signaling is this. When he says Main Street's going to, not just Wall Street, but Main Street, regular people are going to do well in 2026, he essentially means that the rates are going to come down. Because while the richest Americans own stocks, the poorest or the lower class Americans have debt. And if the debt rates are super high, they're paying so much monthly. If rates come down, that helps Main Street. That is signal.
The top 10% of Americans own 88% of equities, 88% of the stock market. The next 40% owns 12% of the stock market. The bottom 50 has debt. They have credit card bills, they rent their homes, they have auto loans, and we've got to give them some relief.
And let's remember, when there is fear in the streets, when everybody is yelling, we're going so much lower, fear like this, fear like this, fear like this. Smart money is buying. They've told you.
Yeah, but you remember that model I told you? So if every time Bitcoin dips, I'm going to be the buyer.
And I loved this perspective. Bitcoin is not a short-term game. Bitcoin rewards the patient, rewards the people with low time preferences, long-term investors. I loved this.
The simplest and best way to get rich is to do goddamn nothing. Seriously, you just buy Bitcoin and forget about it. Just go live your life. Like my friend George Bodine, go paint paintings, go work out, go do whatever, your God-given talents tell you should be doing, knowing that your future economic well-being is in the most secure, growing network in the world, and it'll always be there. And every year you come back to it and you'll say, gosh, that's nice. I'm wealthier now.
Like all, we see tomorrow.